How do you know if you have a healthy family?
We all require closeness, proximity.
Okay.
Affection comes in different packages as well. It's going to be different depending on different people. I even have different levels of affection and connection with my different family members.
Yeah.
The quality of your relationships is the #1 influence on how long you're going to live.
I need to unpack that, and I'm going to. So I'm going to write myself a little note because #ADHD.
I consciously knew that I wasn't going to create an atmosphere of fear for my children. We crave what we're exposed to. Cravings are cultural. You have to spend time knowing your child. And this is one of the greatest challenges today because we're so disconnected. Our devices are divisive. Her physician told her that if you weren't so overweight, you would have died. You being a heavyset woman saved your life.
Shawn Stevenson joins me today. He is the host of the Model Health Show, a often number one, top-ranked health podcast. You can check him out also on YouTube or whatever audio podcast app you like to listen to. Shawn is just like one of those super awesome, dope people who is cool, but also obsessed with science, obsessed with kind of like up-leveling and helping other people do exactly that. So whether it's relationships, mindset, your body, your family, the way that you sleep, the way that you eat, he's the guy you want to listen to. You probably have heard me talk about him endlessly. Like Sleep Smarter was a game changer for me because I read that book about the same time I realized, oh wow, I need to change the way that I sleep. And most of the advice out there it didn't work for me. It didn't feel practical. He followed that up with another great book that just became another #1 seller, and that is Eat Smarter. And not only do I love him, but I love his wife. I love their kids. They're so fun. They're so dope. And today we are just sitting down to talk about that, like how to up-level your family culture, how to get healthier, how do you improve not just your health, but like how do you do this for your whole family? And more than just food and nutrition and exercise, like, what does it mean to have a healthy family? So without further ado, I welcome to the show my friend, Shawn Stevenson.
Oh my goodness, that's so awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey, and by the way, like, if people are wondering, are we both models? No, this is the host of the Model Health Show.
We're
so
here.
We're on
We're
your
here.
set. Like,
yes.
I need a professional set.
Listen, it's your friend, my wife.
Yes.
She's the mastermind behind building this set in this studio here. That's
I love
why we're
it.
here. We're here to create, to empower, and also to hang out with our friends.
Yeah, and that's what it feels like when I'm with you, is like hanging out with a friend. I mean, we are friends, but I couldn't have a set studio like this because I want to travel the world.
Yeah,
and
that
then
part, yeah.
I might not
Respect.
travel as much.
Respect.
So thanks for letting me use your studio to bring you on to talk about a topic that's like super really important to both of us. I want to lead off with your definition of a healthy family. How do you know if you have a healthy family?
Wow. What a question to start with. The first thing, obviously, maybe it's not so obvious, is that it's going to be unique. No family is the same. But within that, of course, there are some core ingredients to what a healthy family looks like. And, some of the core pieces would be connection, and we say words like this, but like, what does that actually mean? This means being able to have this availability. There's a statement that's seek first to understand and then to be understood,
yes.
Right? So an atmosphere of understanding, an atmosphere of curiosity, an atmosphere, and some of these words might sound a little bit like some tough words, but an atmosphere of patience.
Okay.
And an atmosphere of growth as well, accountability, challenge. Because another thing that is not talked about in the context of relationships, like we think this is the Notebook, this is not that. Real relationships, long-term healthy relationships are going to incite challenge. It's going to incite conflict. And so the ability also, of course, to navigate those challenges and those conflicts with an air of love underpinning it, And so another core ingredient would be affection. And affection comes in different packages as well. But we all require closeness, touch, proximity. And, it's going to be different depending on different people. I even have different levels of affection and connection with my different family
Kids.
members.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, with my kids. You know, me and my older son is more like there's a lot of muscles involved in a hug. You know what I mean?
And a lot of dancing.
And a lot of dancing, right? And you know, we're definitely quick to like link up on a dance move. You know, whereas my younger son, you know, we're very much more like close and kind of like huggy, like
How old's
feet
Braden?
on him. He's 12. He just turned 12.
And Jordan just turned 22 today.
23 today.
23
The Jordan
today.
year. It's the Jordan year.
Oh my gosh.
And, you know, same thing. My wife comes from a culture where affection was kind of non-existent.
Okay.
You know, it's like she didn't see her father and mother like ever hug.
Did you?
That kind of stuff. Yeah, in spots.
Okay.
In spots. I had a model of my grandmother and grandfather. They were very loving.
Well, that's why I wanted to walk you back. And, you know, so you've, and I don't want to stop you if you, there's more elements that you think are part of a healthy family, because what you haven't mentioned is anything about weight or exercise or food. Yeah. Are those included?
That part, yeah. So even with that, there's.
But I love that you started with like the emotional stuff first.
Yeah. That's the stuff that influences those other things. Okay. You know, and the crazy thing is we try to address the other things first and then try to have healthier relationships.
Right.
And, you know, again, like these kind of misconceptions can happen to any of us. But I've really found, I've been in the field right now, I'm about to cross 21 years this month. And so early on, of course, I was like, this is the way, whether it's like through food, whether it's through exercise, sleep obviously is a big part. All these things affect our health, but it's our relationships first. And the quality of those affect everything else. And this isn't just hearsay, by the way. One of my colleagues who's sitting right in that chair that you're sitting in, he's the director of the longest running longitudinal study. This means they follow you around, basically, right? On human longevity and wellness ever constructed. It's been over 80 years, and it's had multiple directors. He's the latest to get the torch passed to him. And their data, and again, even him, he's very skeptical, which I love that in a scientist, to be skeptical. He couldn't believe their own data that had been compiled. And so he had to kind of retest things, outsource check-in with other researchers. But their data affirmed that the quality of your relationships is the #1 influence on how long you're going to live.
I need to unpack that, and I'm going to. So I'm going to write myself a little note, because #ADHD. Did you have a household where you felt understood, where you felt connected, where people were present, where there was patience?
I feel like my life was a big experiment, you know.
Is the answer no?
There's a statement that God doesn't call the qualified, God qualifies the called. Right? So life was kind of qualifying me to do what I'm doing today. And this was regardless of what I thought my life was going to be. I grew up in 2 very different atmospheres. My mom had me when she was barely 18 years old. Okay. If you see my birth certificate at my house, there's no father's name there. And it wasn't immaculate conception, you know, from what I've seen. But, you know, I've never met my biological father. Okay. And so, but my stepfather came into the picture when I was just a baby. I was just under a year when they got together. And so I had that aspect of a lifestyle with my mother and stepfather, but that was drugs, alcohol, inner city, violent environment. That's what that environment looked like. And when I would go to stay at their house, because I'm going to tell you about the other environment. Yeah. But to stay at their apartment on the weekends, I would be sleeping on the floor. There's like mouse traps, you know, mice, all the things. My mom worked at a convenience store overnight to, you know, just again, to put food on the table. My stepfather was a chef, and working at the convenience store, one of those evenings, she was stabbed 8 times, you know.
I never knew this.
Yeah, and I've got tons of stories like this. But even within that, by the way, a little sidebar.
You were how old when that happened?
I was about 6. Yeah, I was about 6 years old. And even within that, you know, she was fending off somebody trying to rob the store. Okay. And that's just kind of, my mom is really different. Badass. She's tough, like different. And so, but she restrained the guy and the police got her. But anyways,
after being stabbed
8 times. And so when she went to the hospital and they gave her the stitches and all the things, her physician told her that if you weren't so overweight, you would have died. You being a heavyset woman saved your life. Do you think she's ever going to let that weight go? it protected her, just saved her life. And so this kind of like,
did
it's
that
one of those
message
seeds.
impact you? Like, was there a way, like, were you forming a belief about weight from that incident? I mean, I know you're young.
Of course, there's these subconscious things, you know, of course, like I'm glad that she survived that and that she did have that extra, whatever that looks like. But this is going to branch out after I tell you this other side to my entire, and I'm not exaggerating, not one family member in proximity, not just my nuclear family, but branching out without one chronic disease or more. All right. And that's what I grew up in. And so I had that environment. And at the same time, going to school from kindergarten till second grade. And also I stayed there a lot previously just because sometimes my mom didn't have a place to stay. Right. And so I would live with my grandmother.
Okay.
And this was, you know, I still remember the address, you know, this, it was a very nice part of town.
Okay.
And I walked 1 block to my school, to the local school. There was so much certainty and safety and routine. You know, she would say prayers together with me each night. You know, she would basically, I had my own little table and chairs to like sit and have my dinner.
Wow.
And, you know, I had opportunity to, you know, everything that I could imagine.
For how many years?
For 3 years, like really strong years, but these were like very impressionable years. Like I remember so much of this.
Wow.
But within that, I also saw the relationship between her and my grandfather. And there was so much love. I never saw conflict. Not to say they didn't have it, but there was just this underpinning of love and affection. And she had so much of that for me. That's where I got it. My mother, I can't remember my mother hugging me until I was an adult. Not to say that she didn't. It happened every now and then, like some random thing. But, you know, my grandmother, she was very affectionate towards me and just made me feel loved and seen.
If you had to pick one word to describe what you felt in that home, not from her, but in that home, what's the word or emotion you felt in your grandmother's home?
Important. I felt important.
That gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
What one word would you use to describe the way you felt in your home with your mom and stepfather?
Scared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Has that influenced the way you parent?
Of course. It hasn't. It has no choice but to. And I didn't realize this early on, of course. You just start to replicate things that you experience from your environment.
You saying you felt scared makes me want to cry.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the environment that I was in, you know. And again, but even within this is what people don't understand if they don't come from where I come from. Mm-hmm. There was also so much beauty in this environment as well. Mm-hmm. You know, so this is real talk. You know, there were times we live in places where, you know, there's gunshots, there's a chance to drive by if you're just outside playing.
Where'd you grow up?
All over St. Louis.
Okay.
Which St. Louis, even today, unfortunately, is the murder capital of the United States. All right. And so, and also just losing family members as well to, you know, murder, prison, all those things. And there's a high likelihood that I'm following in those footsteps being in this environment. Because eventually, like, why did I move back with my mother at third grade? It's because my grandfather kept having heart issues. And so they moved back to his hometown, Southern Missouri, far away, that kind of thing. It was like a choice that was made between my mother and my grandmother for me to move back in with my mother. And so, but anyways, even within that environment where it's just like so much uncertainty, there's also a lot of love as well. And also, by the way, we were getting food from charities. Like there's a place called the Hosea House, you know, food stamp, WIC, all this stuff. Wow, again, my mom, they're trying to make ends meet. But this brought about this level of creativity being in this environment. So people see this kind of stuff like little, maybe in a movie, like putting the crate up on the pole to play basketball. Like we did that shit, like for real. And creating all these different games and finding creative ways to bond with our community, being able to be creative even with our food. And one of my most beautiful memories, because my stepfather just passed away just a couple weeks ago, actually. And he was in assisted living for almost 15 years because of brain damage from drugs and alcohol. And this was during the crack epidemic. Next door to that place that I'm describing, there was a crack spot. Just literally there was a walkway, and then that's where it's getting made and sold from. And so, but anyways, one of my fondest memories was all we had in the refrigerator. We had some pasta sauce was sitting on the shelf. Like some ragu or whatever it was. And there was some frozen deer sausage that my grandfather had hunted and sent out in the freezer. There was some government cheese, right? So that block cheese. And there was some Texas toast that we got from the WIC program. And my stepfather made pizzas out of that.
Wow.
One day. Like, we didn't have anything. We're like, we're hungry, like, we don't have anything to eat. And he whipped that up.
That's crazy. That's a core memory for you.
And it didn't, here, let's be clear. It didn't taste like Domino's.
Right.
But the fact that it was pizza.
Yeah, it was pizza. We called it
pizza. The fact
pizza.
that we ate it together.
Yeah.
Right? It was just because kids love that. Like, I love pizza, and like, we made it. We got to have that. And I got this experience of this person making something out of nothing. And that skill, that character trait, that inciting of creativity came from that environment as well.
How old were you when you, like, do you remember looking around and going, like, this is not healthy. These people aren't healthy. These people are ridden with disease. I want to do different. I'm going to do different. At what age do you remember thinking that?
I consciously knew that I was not going to be like this. I consciously knew that I wasn't going to create an atmosphere of fear for my children. I consciously knew that I was going to make a difference in the world. I didn't know what that was, though. But these are the seeds that were planted from my grandmother and watered by my mother as well. Because despite all of that stuff, my mother really busted her ass to put me in position, trying to get me into good schools, that kind of thing. So it's just like, but I could say, ignore that part and just talk about all the bad stuff. But that creates suffering for me.
Right.
She was doing the best that she could with what she had. And the same thing with my stepfather.
Yeah.
I just shared one of those core memories. It's such a beautiful experience that he gave me. And he gave me so many memories like that. Yes, there was a lot of negative things that happened, but I get to choose what I carry with me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's...
Why are you, listen, you talk about, like, you are like one of the most researched people I've ever met. Like, it's fascinating how your brain works. It's fascinating to just to hear your story of, like, how you grew up and the influences you had and how people probably expected things to turn out for you.
Yeah.
Right? And thank you for maintaining your edge too. You know what I mean? Like, you're not like your typical science looking dude. And I think that's part of the appeal. I know it is, right? And also that voice that you use, like, it's like slow jams 98.9. But
Quiet Storm. Yeah.
Exactly. But your show, like, you really talk about, again, like, the science and studies, and you break all this stuff down, you make it really palatable. People can consume it and understand it, and you don't always take a stance. It's like, I'm just going to lay this out for you, and it should be pretty obvious. What is it, though, that makes family such an important piece? Like, this latest book that you've written is about family. You could have written a book about like weight loss, and it's like a guaranteed #1 bestseller, right? You wrote a book about family, about connection, about food, about, like, how to do this together. And I think it's really interesting to hear your own backstory. But what you're taking on is so intensely difficult to change the way families eat. And what is it that motivates you to do this?
All right. So just even that lead in, that it is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Right. That's attractive in and of itself for me, my
okay.
personality type. But also the fact that, in all my years, the clinical work, all the speaking, all the teaching, all the writing of books, I saw that this was the biggest leverage point. Because both you and I have tried to, and successfully in many rights, but get people to target behavior changes.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Do this to get this result.
Yeah.
But what we don't realize a lot of times, and why we blame other people when they're not able to do the thing or they're not sustain it, is that if you give people a behavior change and then they go into an environment that is anti that behavior, right? The culture is completely opposite, or even inundating them with behaviors that make that behavior change even foolish, or whatever the case might be. It's very difficult to make a healthy change in a culture that is unhealthy.
Well, you say culture, but, like, it's even difficult in your own home.
That's what I'm talking about specifically.
Okay.
Let's talk about culture. All right.
Yeah, okay.
So what is culture?
Yeah, what is
All right?
culture?
Culture is defined as the attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors of a group of people that's then passed on from one generation to the next.
Okay.
All right. That's what culture is defined as. Now, we have macro cultures and we have micro cultures. The macro culture in the United States, currently, we are the sickest society in the history of humanity.
Isn't that just like ridiculous?
And by the way, I'm just going to rattle out these facts. Okay, so
All right.
CDC's data published just last year, 2022, 60% of Americans now have at least one chronic disease, 40% have two or more. We're knocking on the door of, we just passed, prior to the pandemic, 42.5% of Americans being overweight or obese, clinically obese, and 72% being overweight or obese. 130 million Americans having type 2 diabetes, prediabetes. 60% of Americans have some degree of heart disease. 100 million plus Americans regularly sleep deprived. I can go on and on and on.
Right.
We're not doing well.
No, we're not.
But that is the larger culture scape. And we both have spent a lot of time trying to change that.
Yeah.
Right? Don't go to the drive-thru. But the drive-thru just is. It's a thing. And it's going to exist. Where we have real power is our microculture and what we do within our household.
Okay.
But even that starts with a cultural shift within ourselves, because we ourselves are a cultural vessel. Because what I saw, and even just recently, taking my family to a place we've never been before, we went to Maui, we went to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And I saw that when you go somewhere, you take your culture with you. I'm a reflection of my culture. So you can plant me anywhere, and I'm going to be an example or a model of where I come from. And that is infectious also.
Yeah.
True story. Literally, even when we were sitting on the plane and people were walking by and they're just like, your family is so beautiful, just like, because they saw us hanging out, I guess, before we got on the plane.
Yeah. But you know what, I'm just sorry to interrupt your story, but you know what people see that's so beautiful is how connected you guys are. I mean, you're good looking people. Stop bragging. But it's not that, because you see good looking families and they don't grab your attention that way. Like, I mean, you guys are an anomaly, how connected you are. Continue.
Thank you. And I didn't even think about the like appearance part of it. I thought about the connected.
You did?
part.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the word she used.
Humble.
And I we just talked about
it. You guys are all very good looking. That doesn't hurt either. But yeah, it's that it's rare. And when you do see it, it kind of like grabs your attention because people are so disconnected from their families. Mom and dad are looking down at their phones and the kids are, on their iPads and with headphones on.
Yeah, we saw that in Maui. Matter of fact, for whatever reason, we kept seeing the same couple when we go out to eat at the resort restaurant. And I'm not exaggerating. Every time, we probably saw them 4 times for 4 meals, and they would be some proximity to us. They didn't even look at each other. They were just on their phone. They ate their food. Yep. Even eating, they were looking at their phone. This couple, and they were probably like in their late 20s.
Wow.
And I was just like, wow, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
And, but okay, of course, I try to see the positive stuff. I'm just like, well, at least they're here. They got to walk together or whatever. Like, but at the same time, it's just like we are experiencing something that is very disruptive to connection. We've never had this kind of access to technology.
So true.
And so I was saying that point to say that even there, people were coming up to us at the resort as we're hanging out. But now that you even just said that, it's because we were playing. We were in a spirit of play. We were connected. That's really what it was.
Yeah.
People aren't coming over like, how your son get these muscles, but they might be curious about that.
Because Jordan was flexing.
I mean, he can't help it.
Yeah.
He's a flexitarian.
Yeah,
he has the
we're
ability to flex. We're
gonna call him Mr. Thirst Trap.
Okay.
And we're gonna put a little clip of him right here, and we're gonna give him a little Instagram shout out. Okay, continue.
You're welcome, son. You're welcome. So, again, we take our culture with us. We are a product of our environment, absolutely, but we're also creators of our environment.
Okay.
And so now here's the other part. As I went to that culture in Maui, I saw something on display that was affirmed in all the studies that are in this new book. And by the way, when you talk about the science, there's never been a cookbook like this before. There's over 250 scientific references in a cookbook.
That's crazy.
Directing us towards like, this is why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
But going there, we see this kind of dramatization of something that was a part of all of our heritage. For them, it's a luau, right?
Yeah.
It's the procurement of food, the hunting, the gathering, the food preparation, and then the celebration together.
Yeah.
We evolved with that.
Yeah.
That's how humans evolved. And so to see it on display and this kind of, again, dramatization of this thing that has been pulled away from our culture. And so my question was this: could this process of eating together be something that our genes need, that our DNA expects from us, that's possibly leading to the behaviors that we're doing and the poor health outcomes. And this is where everything changed. By me asking that question, that sent me down to, like I mentioned, my friend who's the director of that long-running longitudinal study with health, some other researchers at Harvard compiled all this data on eating behaviors, families eating together, and health outcomes.
Okay.
And I was like, when I saw it, I'm like, how is this not like everywhere? This is really, people should know this. But it's like there was a lot of stuff.
We do know it.
We do know it,
We
right?
do know it.
Yeah.
And so, that's the thing. Like you talk about a culture, right? And, it starts with us. But Shawn, there's so many homes, and I mean, I have close friends where there's two cultures within the home. Mom and sometimes dad are doing something completely different from their kids. Like mom and dad are eating green salads and avoiding processed foods. And then they're buying all the things that, you talk about this in the book, the things that have the cartoons on the box, and because their kids want it and they want it. So we're going to give it to them. And we feel disconnected to, I think, our kids in so many other ways, or maybe it's a blended family and we're not seeing our kids all the time. So we just feel like I want to give them all that they want because this is love. That's number one. And number two, I want to say this. This is speaking from personal experience. I sometimes, if I'm being honest, would live vicariously through what my kids got to eat. I couldn't eat that. Yeah. But like their metabolisms are through the roof. They've got abs and they're running around like crazy. So I desperately want to eat these, pink. My downfall with those pink cookies that had like little sprinkles on top. They're like cake cookies at like Ralph's, the ones I'm talking about. I buy those every week for my kids. I did. Yeah. And those are garbage. That's garbage food. That is crap. Yeah. And I would buy it for them because I was like, they can eat. I was living vicariously through them. So that was like a splintered culture within my home. And I think this is happening a lot. So how do you get us? I'm going to throw myself into that, this pot. Like, how do you get us to understand, like, it needs to change for the whole family?
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about this is that I'm not speaking about this through some idealistic lens. I'm speaking about this from where I've experienced this. Yeah. I have this very unique experience growing up in two distinctly different households. Yeah. And within one of those, although this one looks like this kind of more structure and, health affirming, but my grandmother was giving me those. They weren't eating that at the time. Oh. She was giving me those ultra-processed foods because she wanted me to be happy. Yeah. Right? So I know what that's like. And so, but here's the reality. She is the queen of the culture. She's the queen of the culture.
Yes.
All right? You see, you already know where I'm going. And so this is where we put the power back in our hands, but we have to be more intentional about the culture that we're creating. Regardless of where you are right now with the ages of your kids, you are still a benevolent leader.
Benevolent.
You could be benevolent dictator, but you have so much influence. Know your kids, right? Being able to pay attention to what excites them. Yeah. And what de-excites them, what motivates them. We were talking about this when we were doing my show. Yeah. What motivates them. We know those things, but sometimes because we just want people to do what we want them to do, we don't take the time to just like pay attention and to be able to communicate. And we do this also with our significant others as well. If you would just act right, don't kill my vibe. Yeah. Then everything's going to be good. But people are not going to do what you want them to do all the time.
Right. Which is why in the book you talk about, and it reminded me a lot of, it's just your through line of everything you do, which is like, it's attainable. Like that's why Sleep Smarter worked for me. That's why Eat Smarter works for people. And you talk about in the book how, like, don't flip everything upside down. All you're going to get is everybody to revolt and like running at you with pitchforks. Yeah. Like, don't do that. So give me a specific, like my kid loves and is going to throw a fit if tomorrow morning they don't get their sugary cereal. I can't come home with something, that's the healthy version of that. Yeah. What do I do if they just won't eat then? I heard from so many people, they're like, please ask him, how do I handle my picky eater?
I'm going to talk about the biggest factor with this. Mm-hmm. Cravings are cultural. what your kid eats is based on the culture that they're exposed to. They're not going to crave something that they're unaware of. And so it's the introduction of these things in the first place that we have to take responsibility for. We can't just say that it's someone else's fault. We are creating these kind of these connections, and they're very strong neuroassociations that we have with food. One of my other kind of base food memories was my great grandmother. She made me a bowl of Fruity Pebbles.
Oh,
I was probably like 4 or 5 years old.
You just let them soak until the
I could
milk
taste
turns
it
pink.
right now. I could taste it. All right. And again, it's laying down. Guess what? I want more of that.
Yes.
That is chemically designed by brilliant food scientists to create that kind of connection to my brain, to my physiology, to make me crave this thing. And it's so abnormal. It's just nothing real about it at all. Right. This is the definition of an ultra processed food. Yeah. And so, first of all, we've got to have some compassion for ourselves, but also responsibility. The compassion is you're not alone. My book is the first published piece of work demonstrating this new study that just came out. This was published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association. They looked at the diets of American children the past about 20 years, from 1999 to 2018.
Okay.
In 1999, the average American child's diet was made of 61% ultra-processed fake food.
61%, okay.
By 2018, that number was 67.5%. Almost 70% of our child's diet here in the United States is made of fake food, ultra-processed food. And what does that mean? This is not like processing. Humans have been processing food forever. Yeah. It's not like taking meat and cooking it, or olives and pressing the oil out. This is a field of corn or wheat eventually becoming that bowl of Lucky Charms or Fruity Pebbles in my food
Pink,
memory case.
sugar-coated.
All of those chemicals, food dyes, preservatives, additives, the whole nine.
Like, I get this. I think anyone who's listening, like, they're like, I know this. What responsibility do we have to be the parent? Okay.
Last point with that was, we don't know that our kids are addicted. We're little addicts, all right? And big addicts. This stuff is very, very powerful. Yeah. So trying to rip the Band-Aid off is not the solution either. Okay. We've got to understand what we're dealing with here. This is a very strong neuroassociation, our connection to food. So with that said, you just said another kind of key phrase, which is, I don't have time for this. Yep. That's what I was starting with. And I was trying to set the story of like, these are the conditions that we're dealing with right now. It's pretty dire and complicated, but at its core, it's something that we oftentimes don't want to deal with. It's hard. That's right. It's hard, but you get to choose your heart. You could suffer your way into changes in culture and body change and different health practices. Sure. But it's very difficult to sustain something that you hate. Right. All right. We crave what we're exposed to. Cravings are cultural. Okay. Right. Knowing our child. Yeah. Number one, a huge leverage point is we like options, but not too many. Okay. All right. So if you're just like, I'm taking your cereal away. And you get this. And you get this, right? Instead, you come in with an option, right? Come to the table with options, but also speaking to where they are, what is attractive to your child. And I remember, my little brother, my little sister, coming from this environment, it was maybe like 15 years ago, I went over to his house and I just transformed my health. I was helping all these people now. And we were standing outside, it's kind of, still tough vibes, and tough guy vibes. Right. And he's like, I heard you eating organic. It's organic. And I was like, yeah, basically I eat the same thing you do. It's just not sprayed with pesticides and fungicides and herbicides. And know, I shared a little bit like, these are very whatever. And he just kind of looked like, but that's healthy food though, right? Like for him, it's like, it can't be as good as what I'm eating because it's organic. That's right. Right.
So it's a mindset.
It's a mindset, right? And because also we've been inundated with ultra-processed food. All of our advertising that triggers the deliciousness, the pizza pulling in the commercial, the alcohol, every commercial you see is for ultra-processed foods. That's right. Right? There's not like a omelet commercial. You know what I mean? It's just like, we've got to understand what we're dealing with. But let me give you an example. So humans have been driven to eat sweet things forever, but we villainize our desire for sweet things. It's very silly. And I'm saying this Because, for example, what that would indicate through our evolution is that there's a dense source of energy here in this sweet thing, which would generally be honey or sweet fruit or even semi-sweet fruits. And also that's energy to shuttle to the brain and to also stockpile some energy potentially if we come across a famine. And so we've evolved with these drives to eat sweet things. But yes, food manufacturers have manipulated that desire today. But is our desire for sweetness bad? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, honey, which I just mentioned, and I shared over 40 specific foods that have all of this science to affirm this, I'm very bullish on honey right now because there's so many different sweeteners out there and they go in and out of favor, the debates, artificial and even natural ones, quote, natural ones that still look like sugar, by the way, processed sugar. But I shared a study in the book that found that not only does honey not cause this abnormal glucose spike like other sweeteners, but long term, it can actually improve your fasting blood glucose by eating honey. That's abnormal for a sweetener. Why would it do that? Also, dramatically improving blood lipids, so blood fats, and essentially reducing your risk of cardiovascular disease. To call honey a sweetener is like put some respect on my name. Right? It's like it's not just a sweetener. It's so much more than that.
Yeah.
And it's been prized for thousands of years.
So honey, for example, like getting your kid to switch from whatever it is that they're using, like sugar on top of their cereal, to honey, maybe mom's doing that. Like, but how do we get this culture in the family together? Like, again, I think oftentimes mom or dad are doing something that's healthier than what they're doing for their kids.
Yeah. The most important thing here, and you talked about this when I interviewed you as well, is the modeling. And where do your kids actually get to see you doing these things? Even when we're working on our fitness, a lot of times it's like my mom is going to this gym place and she's doing stuff. She comes back all sweaty and happier. Like, where is she really going, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of like, let's involve our kids in some aspects of this, give them exposure. Where do we get this exposure with food? It's at the dinner table. And by the way, when I say dinner table, this could be breakfast, this could be lunch. But what I was sharing earlier was we evolved eating together. That was a part of how we connected. And suddenly that's been pulled away from our culture. And I say suddenly just in the last couple of decades, currently only about 30% of families eat together on a regular basis, according to that data from Harvard I mentioned. And what they found was that when families eat together on a regular basis, the children have a significant increase in consumption of real food, including the intake of essential nutrients that prevent chronic diseases, and a significantly reduced intake of processed foods like chips and soda. All right, one more study.
Yeah.
Another study, this was two different studies I'll put together to kind of wrap this up, published in Pediatrics and published in JAMA. They found that when families eat together just 3 times a week, the children have significantly lower onset or risk of developing obesity and other kind of disordered eating as well. And so again, this is just stacking conditions for our families by having that practice. There's something about eating together with your family. This doesn't mean we're automatically going to eat super healthy food.
Okay.
And for me, I got to share this last one. This is super fast. I was like, well, what about if we don't have a lot of money? Because that's where I come from.
Yeah.
And there was a study that was done, and I highlight all of these things. Pretty much everything we've covered is in the book as well.
Yeah.
But looking at minority children who are generally in the context of a low-income community.
Yeah.
And they found that these children who ate together with their families 4 times a week, whatever meal, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, 4 times a week, ended up eating 5 servings of fruits and vegetables 5 days a week, and significantly lower intake of chips, soda, and other processed foods. There's something
What's going on there? What do you think it is?
2 things. Well, there's actually 5 things, but 2 quick things. Number 1 is that this engages a part of our mind of planning, right? So humans, we're always kind of thinking about things, questioning things. We've got running questions in our mind, like what are we going to eat? Like family dinner is Wednesday night. So it's just in the back of our mind. And so it's just going to alter our behavior subconsciously to like make sure that we are eating a quote healthy dinner or a well combined, what we deem to be a healthy dinner, which might be, you know, some fried chicken and potatoes and whatever, but even that is going to have a tendency towards bringing in some more real food elements.
So if I hear you correctly, if I can restate this, just start by trying to eat together more often and like make that step 1. You don't have to switch everything out to organic quinoa and broccoli. You know, if you've been bringing home KFC, bring home KFC, but this time sit down and eat together and just do this in a way that's gradual and everyone doesn't revolt.
Here's why it works is that now
Okay.
you get to see your child.
Yeah.
You get to see them. You get to really start to understand their character traits, how they speak, what they're attracted to. That's how you have power to help to change what they're eating. You have to spend time knowing your child. And this is one of the greatest challenges today because we're so disconnected. We all have our devices. Our devices are divisive. They just are. And with that, they can also be a unifying thing. They have their pros and cons. But at the table, this is an opportunity to really see them and for them to feel seen. And that changes the whole game right there in of itself. So again, we come into this like, I have a picky eater. We have to be attentive. And it's harder today. We can do it though. And this is some of the other things that we talk about because there isn't a one size fits all with any of this stuff, by the way. And sometimes...
Okay, that's fair.
And by the way, it isn't to villainize that food as well. Like that damn cereal can still be a thing. Let's stack conditions and make sure we're getting in these other things.
Okay.
And here's another thing that tends to happen is that information from that real food that's coming in. Food isn't just food, it's information. It starts to shift the body's intelligence and what you start to crave, So all this is kind of stacking conditions for people.
I told people, everyone loves you and you've been on the show a bunch of times. And so, I told them you're going to be on the show. I told them what we were going to talk about. And I said, when I tell you the concept of this book, which is a mission for you, right? I mean, like this is an initiative. You went into this with an intention. It's about family. It's about the people that we love. And if we say we would lay our lives down for our kids, if we say like, I would do anything to help my child avoid pain, we have to look at what we're doing that's going to cause them pain in the long run. But I asked them, I'm like, when I tell you what the title of the book is Eat Smarter, and it's a family cookbook. And it's about, eating together and eating healthy and learning to do these things together. And I said, hit me right away with your first thoughts of why you can't do this. And Shawn, like almost every message, very similar themes. We're all busy. No one's home at the same time. All picky eaters. We're just not on the same page. Just a lot of this has to do with we're all going in a million different directions. So how do we get people like that's a real thing?
Yeah.
Elizabeth has volleyball tonight and Duke has football, and so my husband's going to go this way, I'm going to go that way. We're coming home with different, how do we get them to do this? And I think we always think dinner.
Yeah, but maybe the problem is the culture that's separating us and creating us so that everybody's running in different directions. If we say that our family is the most important thing to us, and I know many of us that's what we say, but what is our life show? How are we actually living our lives? And not to say, again, we've all got responsibilities, there's a lot going on. My son, he just started playing AAU basketball in Los Angeles. It's a lot. These tournaments, it sucks up so much. But I found creative ways to make this work, right? And so sometimes when we travel, right, this is an opportunity for us to bond. Sometimes, even if the game is just, an hour and a half away and we can drive back, maybe we might get a room, him and I, and just spend time together and sit down and eat dinner together.
Yeah.
And maybe just hang out and then watch a movie after. I find ways, because he's my priority, to connect with him. And it's harder today. It is. It absolutely is. But there is a way. And so, even with that being said, that's going to be a lot of the resistance.
Yeah.
But my mission is let's stack conditions to make it easier for us to make healthier choices. Let's stack conditions to make it easier to connect. And here's another big takeaway for everybody. Quality over quantity. This doesn't mean that you need a whole elaborate whatever, 2 hour whatever. This can be 30 minutes of sitting down and having coffee, right? Or, I make my son this little hot cocoa whenever he's out of school. So, just sitting down and, having a beverage together, a little snack, but just spending time, be present.
Wow.
And putting the devices to the side so you can actually be there with the people you care about.
I mean, that's why I love this book. And people need to get on the pre-order of this book ASAP, depending on when you're listening to this or watching this, because it's important. And I know you love your family. I know that you would lay your life down for them. And the studies and the information that you share in this book is so powerful. It's these kinds of things that once you know it, you can't go back. You know what I mean? But also that it's almost less about the food and more about the connection. And that when you started this episode, Our Time Out Today, you said a healthy family. You didn't mention food. But all of these things are only possible if we're connected, and we've got to find a way to do that. And so the book is Eat Smarter, the Family Cookbook. Yeah. And people, of course, I love an iPad. I love encouraging people to, you're thinking about it right now, so you should go grab the book. Like, we'll put a link below in the show description. Is there another place you want to recommend people to go check it out?
We got to say this last piece, which is the secret sauce to all of this is the delicious food. My family and I were big foodies. And so when we're talking about
recipes.
Listen, but when we're talking about something like my kid with the candy, we have Snicker bites in the book. Like, we're just upgrading the ingredients. For me growing up, I was a huge fan of breakfast sandwiches, like going to McDonald's. Like, I have this upgraded breakfast sandwich that's going to knock your socks off. It's one of my kids' favorite breakfasts. We're a big brunch family. We love pancakes. So we have these sweet potato protein pancakes. This has to be done through the language of deliciousness. Yeah. Right? Give people things that are of equal or greater value.
Like the burgers, the fry. You've got avocado fries, like so many delicious recipes. But also, it's a beautiful book. It's beautiful. Your family's involved in it, and the love pops off the page. This is a great resource for anyone. But Shawn, I know this is something that's really important to you. You've been able to change the culture. You've been able to change the legacy, your family's legacy. And it's pretty powerful to think the thousands, perhaps millions of people's families whose legacies you have the ability to impact them in this way. Guess what? It does take work, and it takes intention. And I think if you love your family, even if it's your spouse, like maybe we're talking to people right now who don't have kids, but you have family. Maybe you live with your parents. And so I encourage everyone to pick up the book.
Thank you. And of course, people can pick it up anywhere books are sold, pre-ordered, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and go to eatsmartercookbook.com.
Okay.
That's where we have all the incredible bonuses, which you are part of the 2023 Family Health and Fitness Summit as well. So you get free admission to that. It's $300 and you get it for free.
Okay.
So it's going to be amazing. We're doing a bunch of giveaways for fitness equipment and food and all kinds of cool stuff.
Every time you launch a book, you put together these incredible bonuses that are just like next level. Amazing. So I will put the link to that so people can go there and get those bonuses, because like, why wouldn't you, right? Thank you so much for letting me use your studio, for being such a great friend, and being such an incredible role model to not just moms and dads, but humans. Like, you're such a great husband and a great friend. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Chalene. That means everything. Thank you.
Yeah.